Welcome back to the Caribbean. The first English settlers arrived here in Nevis 400 years ago and set up their first capital, Jamestown, somewhere over there. But amazingly, as you can see, it's completely disappeared. No sooner had the settlers arrived than they killed off the local Amerindian population. All that appears to be left of them are a few scattered patches of pottery along the coast. We're going to try and find both Jamestown and an Amerindian site. And don't forget, we're still on the hunt for the slave village that we started in the first programme. The next 3 days' archaeology should be just as challenging and even more exciting than the first 3. During our first 3 days on Nevis, we were based at the ruins of the plantation house at Mount Travers. Oh, it's one of those things, Bellarmines. Yeah. We found plenty of evidence of the well-to-do lifestyle enjoyed by plantation owners over the years.
St. Julian Medoc, look at that.
But we were also looking for evidence of the 100 or so African slaves who worked on the estate during the time it was owned by Englishman John Prater Pinney in the 1700s. A difficult task, but an important one, because the wealth of documents that Pinney left us tells us so little about how or where the slaves lived.
Is that the road that the slaves would likely to have come to the estate?
By cutting through the bush and identifying old roads and property boundaries, Stuart and his team reached the area where we think the slave village was located. But they now have to search here to find out if any evidence actually survives. While all this was happening, the geophys team were doing a survey of this field looking for evidence of Jamestown, the first town established by English settlers in 1628. And this is where our team of diggers are heading for next.
I mean, you can see there's a clear ridge running along here.
Yeah.
I mean, then at this point, I mean, we've got this stonework, but whether it's modern or not, I mean...
It actually bounds this whole of this topographic high here.
Yeah.
It's a bit like concrete, isn't it?
These are the anomalies that go with the exposed stone concrete here. There's hints of a rectangular anomaly there.
Yeah.
But then you've got these masses of responses.
That looks like a tropical storm. That's not a weather forecast, is it?
It might just as well be. What's confusing us is there's rectilinear anomalies within this. It looks
how
geological.
Is this what you'd expect from what, volcanics?
Yes.
I mean, it is a volcanic island,
yes.
isn't it?
I mean, that's what's been concerning us for the past 3 days. We've been doing more and more of this field, and we don't know if we're doing geological mapping or whether we're mapping archaeological
Well, we'll only
features.
know
That's
by
what we
digging
need to
some
find
holes
out.
in,
Yeah,
won't we?
so you're going to do it at long last.
Yeah.
Oi, Meg! Meg! Come on!
The plan is to open 4 evaluation trenches to test the geophys results, but not before everyone prepares for what looks like being the hottest day yet.
I mean, I'm running like a pig, I really am.
To the landowner watching from a distance, it must appear that Mick's suffering from sunstroke already. The reason we're investigating this field is because of its position relative to a building known as Fort Ashby. Stuart, what on earth have you brought me to?
This thing here, the cannon on, is thought to be an early fort.
Ah! I thought it was just a beach calf.
It looks like it from that side, doesn't it? Yeah. Very different when you get round here. David could tell you much more about it than I can.
And this is Fort Ashby?
Yes, it is. Main documentation is a French map, a military map, a little bit of espionage ready for an invasion in the early 1700s.
So this is really a spy map?
Yes, it is. You can see the west coast of Nevis, that's where we are now, this very sandy beach area. And we're pretty sure that this is where Fort Ashby is. It's a promontory of land.
And what sort of period is this?
Well, most of the structure here we know dates from 1701, 1702, somewhere in that area.
There's not much of it left, is there? There's another big gun round here.
It's a bit rickety, that, Tony, watch out.
Are we all right?
That's right.
And it looks much more like a fort now. And you can see how it would have protected people against the invaders coming in from the sea. So why are we geophysics over there? Why don't we geophysics over there or over here or even down there?
Well, if there's a fort here, if this is one of the early protection forts, then the fort would be on the seaward side of where the settlement was.
Why?
Because the guns you wouldn't want the guns firing over
Your own
settlement
people.
of your own people.
Yeah.
You wouldn't want the opposition guns, which would target back on this battery, dropping their shot short onto the settlement. So in military sense, the settlement has got to be the landward side of this fort.
Calvin, we're digging here because our surveyor Stuart thinks that Jamestown could have been here, but a lot of people on the island think we must be crazy because, as far as they're concerned, it was drowned in the sea. What is the story?
Well, there's a local legend that Jamestown was destroyed by tidal wave back in 1680, and that most of Jamestown is buried under the sea. As a matter of fact, local fishermen would tell stories of hearing the church bells ringing at the full moon, of course. However, there's been very little documentation in terms of what actually happened to Jamestown. And if we could, through scientific research, somehow attempt to establish that the site of Jamestown is still very much with us, I think that would be tremendous.
Well, so far, all we've done is a bit of clearing and dug a small test pit, but already Phil's got some finds to look at.
Well, let's see. Got a little bit of Oriental porcelain. I think this is building material, brick or tile. Actually, it looks like tile.
Hang on, where's the Oriental porcelain?
There.
Now, how do you know that that is Oriental porcelain?
Years of experience.
But how old is it?
Well, looking at the rest of the stuff, I'd guess 18th century.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
a real good stone to cruise.
Oh.
So whereabouts in the 18th? Can you be more precise?
Middle, second half of.
Middle
This is looking like British creamware. Again, 1770s, 1790s.
So that's fascinating, isn't it?
God, I
We've
mean,
got the 18th
gold
century
goes
here.
right bang
Not a
straight
bad
down to
start. But can we find evidence that people were living here around the time Jamestown was supposedly destroyed in 1680? Mick,
Yeah,
you found us some concrete.
I know, but it's good though, because now that we've exposed it, we can see that it's actually got the slots for posts in it. You see there and there, one in the corner. So it's either the supports for a floor that's coming this way, in which case that's a sort of patio and garden out there, or it could be the other way around.
But it's not ancient Jamestown, is it?
No, but the finds are good, look. The finds are really very interesting. The first thing we got out, Mick found, was that, which is one of those great big early bottles. Give us a date, David, roughly.
You're probably in the 18th century, yeah. That's
So what is
looking good.
really nice, look, is another one of those clay pipe bases
brilliant.
with EB on it.
Excellent.
This is encouraging. This clay pipe looks identical to one we found at the plantation house, which dated somewhere between 1700 and 1720.
Exactly the same initials, EB.
Mick, are you confident that given the amount that's coming out, that it originated here, or could it be earth that's been come from somewhere else
Well,
and
it
scattered here?
could be. I mean, it's very early days what we've got here, but you know, it's very interesting that the first finds that come out are not in the 19th century or even earlier this century, because we did wonder whether there were early, recent cottages in the field. So this is very satisfactory for a start.
So Jamestown could be here after all.
Could very well be. This might have been the inland portion of Jamestown that did not get submerged.
Thankfully, on a small island like Nevis, none of our locations are too far away. The Jamestown site here on the coast is about a 10-minute drive away from the plantation house at Mount Travers further inland.
Another day,
Another day in the jungle.
same jungle.
And this is where Stuart and Dave Rollinson have gone. They now face the more arduous part of the journey as they make their way back through the jungle to the area where we're hoping to find evidence of a slave village.
Hiya. Sorry to keep you.
There they are.
I wonder at times. This is it, David. This is where we intended to find. You already know where we are, don't you?
Yeah.
David hasn't seen this yet, but this is where we walked up, David, the road from Mount Travers.
Okay.
Picked up the Scarborough Road,
Yes.
crossed the ravine,
Yeah.
if you remember.
Yeah.
The point we've reached now is where we've got the junction
Okay.
of Ward's boundary there, and going off in that direction
The
up
southerly
behind us.
direction behind.
These are big collapsed walls now.
Okay.
So these are the points that are mentioned in the penny papers. Ward's boundary, road down to Scarborough's.
Okay.
So the village we're looking for should be somewhere in that area there,
Yeah.
which is it's that general area over there at the moment. What we're going to need to do is basically stage ourselves about every 10 metres up there until we find anything, piles of stones, bits of pottery.
Maybe vegetation, you know, maybe a mango tree, or, you know, sometimes what you'll find, there's, what do they call it, you know, that Moses in the bulrushes, you know that one? That stuff seems to grow where there was either masonry or there was a ruin.
Right.
You remember there's a lot of stuff in the basement at Mont Travers. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Charlie.
Hello.
In we go.
Let's go. Where's that?
What we're also on the lookout for are lemon and lime trees which we know were planted beside the slave village in 1794. Apparently, the trees could have survived.
Loose stones here, actually.
It's possible we may also find plants brought across from Africa with the slaves, like those found in other areas of the island. American ecologist Jim Johnston runs guided tours of Nevis, and I asked him to show me the type of thing we should be looking for.
Come over here, we have another African plant we were wanting to show you, which is castor beans. Castor beans used for making castor oil. Now, this, with a lot of your local medicines, have to be made very specifically, because if you make them wrong, you can kill yourself. This contains a thing called aberin, which is the toxin that does nasty things to your body. I believe it's supposed to destroy your kidneys. Not positive on that one. But it's, again, a native of Africa.
So who were these people who were bringing all these things back from Africa?
Well, a lot of them weren't really sure. It's probably the slave owners trying to bring plants over that the slaves could use, or that they knew how to use for medicines, various other things, because that way they didn't have to learn about all the local foodstuffs.
So would it have been the slavers selling it to captains, do you think?
Yeah, it probably would have been. They would have been getting it for them and sending them right on along. Right over here is something I want you to take a look at. We're not looking at the tree here, we're looking at a vine that's growing on the tree, which is again from Africa. This is Abricus pecatoris. It's commonly called a jumby bead. The vines themselves contain little seeds like these, which you'll notice they look like little red eyeballs. Those are the eyes of the spirits watching when you're going through their woods. That was what the African term jumby was supposed to be about. Now, they could have technically been brought over for medicines. Raw, they contain toxalbumin, or highly poisonous, but the Africans boiled them up with goat's milk and made pentadiazole. That's the current name for it, but they would give the milk to children and it put them to sleep. It's used for making sedatives for use in small children.
Hey, something red, look. Look. This is a jumby bead. And so far as I know, the trees were brought over from Africa.
Really?
And they're seeds, in effect, of the tree. So this is something imported.
Right.
And here we have it in a pile of stones that may look something particular.
So this is the sort of thing you might expect to find where slaves are living, is that right?
Absolutely.
A tiny find, but its association with a collection of stones that may have been used to support a hut could be the first indication that we've found the slave village. Well, you've dug the morning's biggest trench.
Yeah, it feels like it as well, I tell you.
What have you got then?
At the Jamestown site, Carenza's disappointed because her trench over the geophys signal, which might have been building remains, has turned up relatively few finds and seems to be geological rather than archaeological. Ironically, we still have plenty of early finds turning up around the concrete plinth.
God, you really have got a lot more than we have, haven't you?
Oh yeah.
What's the story now then, David? Has it moved on at all?
It's looking pretty good actually, consistently of one date, I'd say tail end of the 17th century.
Oh, right.
Some familiar stuff, we've seen the pipe bowl, we've got another interesting marked pipe stem,
good, isn't it? Yeah.
which just needs cleaning up.
Has that got any on the side of it?
Oh, that's good. Looks like WE.
So, we know that the earthquake was in 1680. Would you be prepared to hazard a guess as to whether this assembly was before or after that?
I would guess just after, immediately after.
So the archaeology is showing us that there's occupation carrying on after that 1680 event. So, you know,
that's really nice. The archaeologist telling us more than history does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
David! Yes? Were you shouting for me?
Yes, I was, Stuart. Got 3 pieces of ceramic.
Have you?
Yes.
Hang on, we'll come up and join you. Come on, David.
I got 3 or 4 pieces of pottery. Well, I had 4. Alrighty, I put little sticks out. One here.
Gosh,
I would just raking there,
Right.
one on the surface.
see 'em now, yeah.
And the other thing that there seems to be quite a lot are these little shells. Now, I don't know much about shells, but I'm pretty sure they're a beach shell. Now, I don't know why they're up here, but there seem to be a few of them around in this area.
What you got, David?
Well, we've got
what's
this enormous sisal plant. Apparently, you slice it and run your finger along it.
Will it cut me?
No, it won't cut you, but it's rough, and they used it for making rope.
Really?
Yeah. Why it's here, I'm not clear,
That's
but...
the only one of those I've seen in all the days cutting.
Right.
That's enormous, isn't
And
it?
behind it, we've got a wall.
Blimey.
So,
This got
proper
some dressed stone,
foundation
hasn't it, down there?
stones.
So all the stones have been ripped out of here,
Yeah,
haven't they? Been
yeah.
rubbed off.
So more substantial than just a wall that's got proper foundations, and I don't know what it could be, perhaps an overseer's house,
Right.
given the housing down the hill.
With the right context with all these other little terraces and pottery and everything
Yeah.
else here, wouldn't
Yeah.
it? Small building to keep an eye on them. This is great, it gets better by the minute.
Well, over here,
It gets better.
we've got a whole collection of plants.
Oh,
They're all
goodness.
around the area.
Oh, again, I haven't seen anything like this coming up until we get to this site.
Yes.
What are these then?
Well, this is one of the names, local names of this is Moses in the bulrushes, because it has a little flower that looks like a boat.
Mm-hmm.
It's a native plant to this part of the world,
See,
and
I knew
it just
that.
seems to be attracted to areas that have either been dug over or where there's been masonry.
Hello? Yeah?
Tony, it's Stuart. Hi, Tony. Good news. We think we found the slave village.
You found the slave village?
Really? Brilliant.
Brilliant news. Even though it suddenly occurs to me that I'll now have to make the horrendous trip through the jungle to go and have a look. Phil, in the meantime, has gone on his own journey across to the other side of the island, where Geophys have started work at a fantastic new site. Its location will mean we're a bit more spread out, but it should be worth it because this exposed stretch of coast is literally covered in prehistoric pottery belonging to the Amerindian people, the original inhabitants of this island. Tomorrow we hope to put in some evaluation trenches here, but in the meantime we've enlisted the help of one of the schools on the island to help us field walk the site to make a record of the finds.
What is this?
That's quite interesting. That's a piece of burnt stone. Now, we don't actually know that is like a hearth or a fire, but it could be where somebody's actually
Right
deliberately...
here?
Yep, right here. But if we get a lot of it in one place, then it could mean that somebody deliberately had a fire there.
At the Jamestown site, we're still finding 18th century pottery in the area of the plinth, and we've started digging test pits to find out if the finds continue in other areas of this field.
Just about here, Tony.
Luckily for me, the weather has cooled down a bit for my visit to the slave village.
We're there.
We're here.
24 minutes.
Is that it?
Not bad.
It's a good old climb, isn't it?
It's like circuit training. You're up one minute, you're right down low the next minute, and then the ground's all bumping, you're moving sideways, and then you're tripping over stuff. It's quite a feeling of satisfaction when you get here, though, isn't it?
Yeah, dulled by the thought that you have to go back.
So what you got to show us?
Well, we've cleared an area just up at the back. There's an unnatural stone line, and you can see the land slopes down. So obviously, if you're going to build here, one end of the house would have to be raised a little bit. And it's in the general area where we found the ceramic this morning.
There
So
seems to be cutting a series of platforms in the hill to put
Yeah.
garden plots
Yeah.
on, or yards and houses.
There's the guys.
here we are.
Charlie!
How you doing?
All right, what you got?
All right.
Just find this again. Got some findings.
Wow, what's this?
Just found here. Just as soon as you call me, found a piece.
I don't know what these are. Shall I give them to David?
You sure? You could.
Oh, it's one of those little jumbo beans, isn't it?
Jumbo, yeah.
Did you know that this place was here before?
No, I didn't.
You had no idea?
No idea, no whatsoever, no. And not until today.
Just over to the back of David and Charlie, you see there's an area where there's a bit of a platform.
He's in here.
Could that be a building, Stuart?
Well, it might be a stance to hold up a structure. It might just simply be the edge of a garden or a little plot or a yard or something, but we've found actually about 3 or 4 of those where you get a little grouping of stones with smaller stones on top. So yeah, they may well have been the the lift ups, as it were, for the cabins.
If you cleared the whole area and you did some surveying, I'm sure you could determine, you could see that there were some levels, and it might start to make some sort of sense.
Have we decided how much more we're going to do here, or are we going to decide that tonight when we get back?
I'm just about got enough energy to walk back to the bus, so after that...
I think the right tactic with this site, now we've identified where it is, and there are lots of features in here, and it's going on for another 50 or 60 metres that way. I think the right thing to do now is to simply fix its position in relation to the walled boundaries, Scarborough Road walled boundary, so that for future work anybody can come back and find exactly what we found and carry on work from that.
How important to find is this?
It's really important. This is the first time on Nevis that we have ever tried to do this. We've never really gone out and tried to look for a slave village. So for us on Nevis, it's really important.
It's important to say that some of this, a lot of this has been about finding slave material, because we know all about the plantation owners. What we don't know about is the slaves.
This is where today's West Indian society began, as in these villages, and that's why it's important.
One last thing, did we find the lemon and limes?
Sure.
Hey, where was the tree, Rudy?
Just below there, at the gut down there.
That's amazing. I never thought we'd find those.
Well, it's a combination of good field work and sheer determination that have got us here. Although a long programme of fieldwork's needed to sort it out, already we have a better idea of how this slave village must have looked around the 1790s. We now know it was built on a series of terraces, situated close to a ravine for water, but hidden away on poor quality rough ground on the edge of the sugar plantation. Certainly a marked contrast to English plantation owner John Prater Pinney's residence at the centre of the estate. David, here's the finds from the slave camp.
Oh, wow.
Excellent.
Loads of stuff.
What have we got? I don't believe it. You've got Oriental porcelain.
Oriental porcelain for slaves.
There is an overseer's house up there currently.
Stoneware, salt-waste stoneware.
Is it what you'd
High
expect?
status.
And that's
Slave.
English. Late 18th century.
Pre-emancipation stuff.
It is.
It looks like it.
How did Jamestown go?
That's been absolutely fantastic. We put in some test bits, we've done a lot of shovel pitting, and we found a lot of 17th, 18th century material all at one end of the field, so we're pretty sure where the site is.
It's starting to rain. Believe it or not, in this little idyll, we're having a tropical downpour. We've also got the Amerindian settlement to do tomorrow. Shall we get inside? Day 5 in the Caribbean, and it hasn't stopped raining since last night.
Well, I think we're going to have to wait for this to drain a little bit, Caroline, before you do any more work there.
We've decided not to be led by the geophys, which seems to be showing volcanic geology rather than archaeology. Instead, we're going to be guided by the test pits we dug yesterday, which show that all the pottery finds are concentrated near this ridge of higher ground.
Yeah, it's coming all along here, isn't it? If we could maybe actually do some clearing here, Winston, if you got some of your lot here today.
Yeah.
And you can see that, it's the sharp drop in the ground here. You see how much higher up you are than I am here, and then there's this line of boulders here, which I think is probably that same feature that comes along like that and turns.
Do you think this is all one thing?
Well, I think that's certainly what I'd like to find out.
Not far away at Cades Bay, Stuart has swapped the jungle for the beach and is planning to spend the day looking for further clues to the exact location of Jamestown.
I think what we need to try and do here is identify from these old plans of forts that Christina's got out the archive and all these old maps, all new information for Jamestown, and see if these will help us identify where Jamestown has been recorded.
Right.
Okay. And if we can do that, it might help us determine the extent of Jamestown and see whether where they're digging is the south end, the north end, the east end, or whatever.
Meanwhile, Mick and I have managed to miss the rain by going across to the other side of the island to look at our new site, where we found evidence of the Amerindian people living on Nevis at least 1,000 years before the English settlers arrived. This is one of just a few Amerindian sites recorded on the island, and it's badly in need of some archaeological rescue, because the evidence here is gradually being washed away by the sea. It does seem a very exposed place for these Amerindians to live. What were they doing here?
They were finding food out of the ocean.
Straight out of the ocean?
Straight out of the ocean.
And eat it?
Shells, fish, you name it.
Phil! You're
Come and
looking
have a
pretty
look at
happy.
it. This is amazing.
I heard you were excited.
You'll probably tell me, Mick, oh, I've seen dozens of sites. I have never, ever seen a site like this before. Look at all this pottery.
God, blimey.
And I mean, you'll find that...
Is this all Amerindian, all this stuff over here?
Yes, it's all Amerindian, all of it.
All prehistoric?
Very prehistoric.
What sort of date are we talking about?
This looks like between 500 and 1080, somewhere in that area.
Look at this. Look
Oh,
at this here.
that.
Oh.
Now look at that. Can you imagine that has been in the ground? What'd you say, since 700?
Yeah, somewhere around there.
So why hasn't it been damaged?
Because it's been buried and the surface has been eroding slowly.
That is the awful thing about this. Look at the sea. It's coming in. That is why we can see that. And I mean, come and have a look at this here. You can see another reason I get excited. Look at this.
Oh.
Look at that.
Hey.
Yeah, but those are bits of broken, polished stone axe. But now mine on, Mick, because you're probably standing on more
there's
of it.
another bit.
Yeah, but that's
There's
it.
another bit, yeah.
Look, you see, now, look, these two bits go back together again.
Yeah.
That's where somebody has been working
Yeah.
a stone axe.
We gotta get all these plotted,
This
haven't we?
site is in situ.
Yeah.
It's never moved.
Anything else?
Well,
Well,
I
it's
mean,
full
you
of
just
stuff.
you can just keep looking, can't you? I mean, it's amazing.
Oh,
Hey, what? Look at that.
Look at that.
That is
Oh, yeah.
amazing. That is really prehistoric.
Oh yeah.
What's it- what is it?
But it looks like to me, I mean, look at it. It looks like the handle of a large pot.
Right.
Which the handle, so that they didn't have to pick up the hot pot off the fire. They had the handle above the fire to pick the pot
So
up
they
with.
just
and they put a
decorated
little
with a little-
decoration on it.
Oh, what?
Amazing to think that this was just lying on the surface. All this pottery was made by Amerindian people who settled on Nevis over 1,000 years ago. Originally they came from South America and were related to the Mayans and Incas. They settled on many of the islands in the region, and although some sites have been excavated, no one has ever excavated an Amerindian site on Nevis. To most Nevisians, these sites are a mystery, but maybe not for much longer.
Test pit.
Yeah.
Oh,
look at that!
Now that's a post hole, isn't
That
it?
is very much a
Yeah.
post hole.
That's classic,
and,
isn't it?
and
I don't think
you
there's
can
any doubt about
You
that.
can see it's got a nice bit of packing in it.
Yeah.
Right in the bottom there was
can't
a
believe it.
fleck of charcoal.
Yeah.
You're
I
speechless.
can't believe
You
it.
keep saying, I can't believe it. Are these rare?
Very rare to find. Very, very rare.
How do we know that this is really old? It looks so well defined. It looks to me like it was probably put in the 1980s.
It does look well defined. It is well defined, but the soil that came from it, or that it is actually filling it, is a much darker colour than the sand above it. And when we had it, you can see we had it in section. Here's the edge of our original test pit.
Yeah.
You could not see that post hole cut from the modern surface. So I'm fairly happy that all this build-up of sand is
since-
over the top of that.
Yeah.
And are you happy that that's prehistoric?
Oh man, I'm absolutely
moon.
amazed. Yes, yeah. I can't wait to see the rest of the building.
Fantastic. We may have found our first ever prehistoric hut, and we'll now extend this test pit to see if we can find more post holes. Over on the other side of the island at the Jamestown site, we've now opened up a trench on the edge of the ridge of higher ground.
What do you got?
Masses and masses of stuff.
Cool, you have. Great. I recognise this. You've got a great chamber pot there. That's 19th century,
Oh, really?
1830s sponge decorated chamber pot. British made. Gave somebody a lot of comfort here.
Well, we were hoping if we find all of it, we can stick it back together again and use it as the on-site loo.
Yeah. That, by contrast, is very definitely late 17th century.
Oh,
and that's
really? Wow, brilliant.
Staffordshire slipware. It's a cup.
Yeah.
Good, because we were slightly worried this was bought a bit late.
17th, late 17th
Really?
again.
Brilliant.
Slipware.
It's early days yet, but Carenza thinks our new trench is also turning up evidence of structures.
The two outer sides of a wall, you see those big boulders there?
Yes.
I think they're one side of a wall. There's a slightly less well-defined line of them along
Yes,
here. I
yeah.
think they've fallen away down the slope a bit more. And I think that's the core there.
In the meantime, while we wait to see if we've got evidence of early Jamestown, Victor has produced a sketch of what it may have looked like just before the earthquake and tidal wave of 1680.
What do you think of that, David?
It certainly has some elements of what I would expect to see. Buildings mixed together, different heights of buildings, indicating different wealth of the owners, and you've got the thatch roof as well that we know was here even by 1700. There was a concern about using thatch roofs on the island.
So before the earthquake and the tidal wave, it's going to be a quite sort of disorganised settlement, not very well planned, not regularly laid out, not with well-built buildings.
No, that would be the Caribbean tradition at that time.
Right, and then after the earthquake, you've got something much more organised, better laid out.
Well, I would imagine one thing is you've got money available, so you would start to see more stonework.
Because that's when the sugar was starting to become established, is it?
Yeah.
So, in fact, the earthquake occurs at the point at which the sugar industry is starting to take off.
That's right. You've been in it maybe 15 or 20 years, so the economic effects of that are starting to be noticed on Nevis.
As far as finds go, we've found brick and slate used on buildings here in the 1800s. Confirmation again that Jamestown survived the tidal wave in 1680. But we also have some early pottery finds in our collection.
A piece of North Italian slipware, which is extremely unusual, yeah.
All of which would have been shipped here at great expense. Some pieces are becoming very familiar to us. These fragments belong to a German Bellarmine jug dating to around 1680. In contrast, many of the prehistoric finds picked up at the Amerindian site are less familiar to us. For instance, we have a decorated drilled stone.
It's extraordinarily beautiful. It's solid.
I mean, it doesn't look like stone, but it is a piece of stone.
How would these people who had no metal whatsoever, how would they drill that hole and get it all the way through this thin piece of very hard stone?
We also have drilled olive shells worn with others on a necklace.
And then they would take an instrument and grind off this piece here and then string it through the mouth, out the grinded hole, onto the next one, and then they'd string them around and they'd tinkle and they'd be shiny and beautiful.
One find, however, Phil does recognise.
This is very common. It's a polished celt or an axe.
You're right, we call it polished axe, yeah.
Okay. And it is highly polished. Unfortunately, this has been in the ground a long time.
Now, what about this one? You've been trying to tell me that...
This is a universal Caribbean tool for the Amerindians, and not just for the Caribbean as we know it, the whole circum-Caribbean, South America, Central America, Mexico, Florida, the Bahamas. This is your universal Amerindian tool, and it could be hafted, or it can be used by hand. It can be resharpened. There's a blade that's been created here by grinding the top and the bottom. Now, what is it?
Well, I was going to say, you tell me that they make it out of this.
Sure.
How do you make one of those out of one of those? This is not a good
example of. This is a small conch, a Strumbus gigas.
Right.
Queen conch. It is, the larger versions of this have this heavy lip right here at the mouth, where the animal comes out and comes out here, and when he comes out and he walks along. You see that? Yes, it's a marvelous one-legged animal, and delicious. The Amerindians had them for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
In addition to widening our original test pit, we've now opened up several other evaluation trenches put in to test the geophys readings on this site. At the moment, one thing all the trenches have in common is that they're all turning up lots more pottery.
Big bit for your collection.
Wow. Crikey. That's a big one.
Some bowl. And these are just ordinary, everyday cooking pots?
I think so. I think that they're mostly utilitarian pots here and not very highly decorated.
Maybe just little simple handles?
Yes, here's a handle right here. We saw it earlier. This is... well, we thought it was a face at first, didn't we?
Well, I was quite convinced. What, you changing me, telling me you changed your mind?
A couple of fellas said if you put it like this, it becomes a shark.
I suppose I can see that. Yes, do you know of representations of sharks?
I've seen one.
Yeah?
I've seen one, yes.
It has to be said this isn't a bad place to work, especially as this site requires no clearing at all. So far, our other trenches have turned up nothing but pottery, but in our original trench, we've now uncovered more post holes which we think belonged to an Amerindian hut. To give us an idea of what this structure may have looked like, our artist Victor Ambrose has produced yet another sketch.
Oh, how's he doing then?
He's amazing. It's like he was here then.
What's this pier jetty thing out here?
Well, it seems from all archaeological evidence so far, the huts always had a little windbreak outside the entrance, behind which they cooked. They also burned inside the house to keep the bugs out. You remember the report of these Eskimos who were found frozen 3,000 years old, and they opened them up and their lungs were like 3-pack-a-day smokers, you know, because they burnt inside to keep warm. Here, the Amerindians burnt inside the house to keep the bugs out.
What sort of material would the hut have been made of?
I think it was made of timber. The uprights are timber, the cross beams are timber. The cladding would be woven fronds of palm trees. There were no coconut trees in the Caribbean then. The coconuts were imported by the Europeans. So we had different palms. Bamboo, there's a lot of bamboo in the hills.
So do we actually know that they would have had things like that on the top of their roofs?
Well, yes. You see, the early Spanish chroniclers, like Oviedo, did drawings in the early 16th century of the Amerindian huts that they came across in Hispaniola, Puerto Rico, Cuba, and they're quite accurate depictions.
At the Jamestown dig, our trenches are proving equally productive.
We've taken it down now. We've got nothing coming out of here. The fines on this side have completely died out. There's been very little rubble tumble from this wall, this side. We think we've got footings of another wall coming across here. Pete's just starting a trench over there across what seems to be another wall going. Can you see there's a sort of drop in the level of the ground surface?
A definite ridge here.
We've had a lot of finds out of it, a lot of 19th century stuff which is really in with the rubble, and a smattering, a good smattering of 17th century stuff, some of it really quite nice, feathered slipware and all that sort of thing. And we then decided to, in half the trench, go down through all this tumble, which seemed to be just where the wall had fallen down, and see what was underneath it, and that's when we found this wall, and that's really where we've got to now. We've had some nice finds out of that, haven't we, Jenny?
Yeah, we've got a big conch shell, like you said.
That's right.
Seafood, which looks as if it was broken.
That's the way you get it out.
And eaten. We've also had a huge number of sort of iron nails and fittings.
That's the key.
Which I guess if they're timber buildings,
that's right,
then you'd need lots of nails to keep them all together.
Presumably it was reused again afterwards. We're getting pottery of, well, certainly 17th century and 19th century date.
Well, remember there's a tradition here of reusing sites over and over again, so that's what you would expect to find. It's interesting that you've got the iron, because obviously there were wooden buildings.
It's going to take me a couple of minutes to find these things again. You know it's
Stuart,
like
it seems, can't keep out of the jungle.
This is horrible, Stuart.
He's been investigating the area around where we're digging, and across the road in this coconut grove, he's convinced he's found more evidence of Jamestown.
You have to climb under that fallen palm tree there,
right.
Tunde.
Oh yeah, the structure's
definitely. That's pretty good, isn't it?
You see this wall line down here? There's pottery everywhere. There's clay pipe almost where Tony's standing there. This is only one of a number of building-like structures which are in this grove.
Yeah.
And they're certainly the foundations of buildings. The question is what type of buildings are they? Can they tell us anything more about Jamestown?
It looks like this is more evidence that Jamestown survived the earthquake and tidal wave of 1680. So where did the legend of Jamestown falling into the sea come from? What is the documentary evidence for Jamestown?
Well, good and bad news. The bad news is we don't have an enormous amount. The good news is we have a couple of little snippets that I think are really, really important.
Oh, right. So what's that?
First of all, 1700, an ordinance was passed on Nevis prohibiting the use of thatch on houses. Specifically, it said in the towns of Charlestown and Jamestown.
Right, so it must still have been there then.
That's right. Secondly, about 3 years later, the 4.5% export duty on sugar was introduced. Once again, it said specifically applied to the ports of Charlestown and Jamestown.
So is there any evidence for this flood?
No.
So where does the myth come from?
Well, the first reference seems to come from the Isles report of 1871, where he mentions the earthquake and the flood. Unfortunately, Mr. Isles wasn't a person who did any footnoting, so where he got that information from, we really don't know.
And it sounds like it might have been completely wrong.
Could well have been. I think there's evidence that there was an earthquake in this area in 1680. Whether there was a tidal wave, this massive destructive tidal wave, say that we haven't found any reference to that, contemporary reference to that.
It looks like we're going to end the day as we started it, with lots of rain. However, Stuart and his research team haven't finished yet. They've spent the day cross-checking old maps with old documents and have made an important deduction.
So we've positively identified that Morton's Bay Fort is the fort we now know as Fort Ashby, and that fort known as Cades Bay Fort, D, is the fort that's now missing. And the settlement that's marked on this 1706 French map, which is most likely Jamestown, is in between the two forts. It means that Jamestown is located northwards of our Fort Ashby, between Fort Ashby and in fact just round the corner from here. So it means that where our excavations are currently underway from the geophysical results is right at the southern tip of the Jamestown settlement. And what we need to now do is look further northwards and look in that area and see if anything else survives.
Apparently the bad weather we're getting is being caused by Hurricane Mitch, which is blowing through the Caribbean at the moment. And it means not much more can happen here today. Although Carenza, dedicated archaeologist that she is determined to collect some water for washing fines. But the storm has yet to reach our site on the other side of the island. And Victor reckons he's got just enough time to get John's opinion on his sketch of an Amerindian.
I want to have a chat with you about the body markings and things like that we still have to. Those are the designs on the old engravings, but I was just wondering if there were any variations.
They were more geometric than that. They were stylized frog drawings.
Really?
Yeah, geometric zigzags which would go across the body.
Oh, we'll have to have a look at those carefully.
Yeah.
And
that's really good. That's a big iguana.
I gave him a big iguana.
Yeah, but
they had them.
That's about as big as they get.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure.
Marine iguanas and the like.
Look at that. It's going to pour.
Hurricane is an Amerindian word, and no doubt they had to put up with weather like this too. End of day 5, and as you can see, the weather can even be lousy out here in the Caribbean. Mick and I have just got to the Amerindian site to join in all the excitement. And everyone's gone, and the trenches are full of water. But apparently there are even more post holes, and hopefully even more tomorrow, and the Jamestown site's getting bigger and bigger by the minute. Beginning of day 6, our last day on Nevis, and it's hard to believe I'm standing on exactly the same spot that I was 12 hours ago when the rain was absolutely bucketing down. Although I'm not sure we're out of the woods yet by the look of the clouds over Mount Nevis. Anyway, our big push today is to see if we can find any more post holes for our Amerindian structure in the trench over there, and to rescue as much archaeology as we can over there from the coastline before it all gets washed away. Keep your fingers crossed about the rain. What we do know now, after digging several trenches on this site, is that the deep-seated volcanic rocks are making it difficult for geophys to detect the archaeology. John and Chris have decided they'll be more use to us today helping to extend Trench 1, where we hope to find more post holes for our Amerindian structure. Over by the sea, we aim to rescue and record as much archaeology as we can.
Wow. Phil! We found a zemi!
Where you got?
A zemi, Phil.
A zemi?
A zemi. There are lots of things like this, but none of them are worked as this has been worked. But now look at it.
It's hollowed. See, it's smoothed off.
It's been ground.
Oh, yeah.
It's beautiful. Some people say it represents a volcano because it looks a bit like a volcano.
Right.
Others say it represents the original hut that the family came from in South America. It is your classic early Amerindian Caribbean icon.
On the other side of the island, we're continuing to find evidence that the first town founded by English settlers in 1628 was still occupied in the mid-1800s.
Oh, wow, yeah, it's a flat iron, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. It certainly looks like it.
Wow, it's heavy, isn't it? Yeah, and that's where the handle would have come up
right.
from. I mean, you needed the weight to flatten out the creases, didn't you? So
Yeah, but
still, it's good evidence for domestic activity, isn't it?
It certainly is,
I mean, you
yes.
don't get much more domestic than ironing.
No.
You got anything else?
Well, we've got this axe here. See, that's where the handle,
Oh,
the
right,
shaft
yes,
went.
and that's the
there's
blade,
the
yeah.
blade for chopping.
Wow.
And lots of other lumps and pieces.
Yesterday, by counting the number of forts recorded on the French spy map of 1706 and then identifying each one against surviving plans, Stuart and his team discovered that there had once been another fort protecting Jamestown here at Cades Bay. This has changed our reading of the 1706 map. Whereas we first thought Jamestown was to the southeast of Fort Ashby, we now know it was to the southeast of the fort at Cades Bay. Stuart now believes our excavations are on the southern edge of Jamestown and that the rest of the town lies further to the north.
The modern road runs in front of the Cades Bay Hotel, and the missing Cades Bay fort was beyond it.
Yeah.
But the 1706 map shows the old road going up the hill. So I think it'd be worth looking over where those cultivation plots are and seeing what we can find.
Okay.
Bit patterning.
Oh yeah, I'm getting some more of that local courseware.
Certainly there's plenty of pottery to be found here, and with a bit of help from one of the locals, there's more to be discovered.
Looking for old ruins.
There's one right there.
Oh yeah.
Old structure.
Yes.
Hey.
It goes across
Aye.
over here.
Oh, you've got a definite faced wall here. These are all dressed stones. You've got an archway here. It looks like either the top of a window or maybe even a light to let light down into a cellar,
Okay.
something like that. From the style of the stonework, I would guess it's no earlier than about 1750 and certainly no later than about 1850. What sort of things, date range have we got on the pottery from the fields? I mean, what's the earliest?
Well, I think we could have late 1600s here and through to about 1840 with some of this stuff.
Well, that fits in with the date range.
Yeah, it would do.
I mean, with this, I'm finding pottery across this field here.
Okay.
And we're certainly within the area of Jamestown. I think the date range for the building the pottery puts us nicely in that period that Jamestown was here. So look, see if you've got a bit of Jamestown in your field, eh? Nice.
So that means I'm the monarch in this area.
Yeah, you're the monarch. Yeah, that's.
Crikey, Barney, that's moved on a lot, hasn't it, since I was here last?
It certainly has, yeah.
A veritable forest of post holes.
Absolutely.
Isn't it
amazing?
Yeah.
It's brilliant. We've got at least one sort of curve of post holes. I think you can probably see them.
Yeah,
There, moving round. There's another two brilliant ones.
see those big ones at the back?
Really
are
smart
ones, aren't they? Beautiful.
Look at that. This one's even got a shell in it.
Are they part of a line?
Well, they're obviously very, very similar in size. They're about that big, and they're close together, so they're associated.
This one now is a double one.
Oh, right,
that
yeah.
first one, we now think it's a double one.
Yeah, right, yeah.
There's a couple more over there, so we've got definite structures.
Well, what are you going to do now then, Phil? Have we got time to dig a bigger area?
Well,
I mean, my temptation would be to err on the side of caution, but what do you chaps think? You're digging it.
Well, I'd like to go for a bit more definition on the post holes, because at the moment we've just got them in the surface, and I'd like to have a look at them in section.
Right.
And define that they are actually post holes. And then if we've got time, we can extend the trench a little bit further that way.
At our rescue dig, we've found what we think is an Amerindian rubbish dump. And currently all the finds from it are being washed in the sea.
We're just using the sea to wash the soil off because clearly this indicates a great deal about the diet at the time, particularly the small bones, which we think are coming from, well, obviously fish, but also mammals as well, you were saying.
These are 2 of the 4 sets of jawbones of a parrotfish.
Ah, right.
And it's amazing, the colour is still there,
Yeah.
which is the most common fish on the tropical reef. It eats the coral. It's very plentiful and it's readily available.
How would they have fished for them, John?
These, there were several methods. They had their woven reed nets.
Yeah.
They used a soporific, which they would throw from the roots of a tree, throw in the water, and everything downstream would come up.
But just stun them like?
Yes.
Yeah.
The jawbone of the Antillean rice rat, a creature now extinct throughout its range, killed off by the European rat. Your basic Friday or Saturday night beef stew.
What did they do for meat apart from rice rats?
Well, fish, rice rats, a large Antillean rodent called an agouti, sea turtles, sadly to say, they ate a lot of sea turtles.
I love this sort of archaeology, Tony, because it looks like nothing on Earth, you know, just stuff out of a soil, and yet you get the whole lifestyle, the diet. It gets you so close to people at the time, what their daily life was like.
So you've got this incredibly fit people who really understand how to interact with the landscape that they live in. So what happened to them?
And the seascape more. I think they're no different from any of us. They were on an odyssey as a people. They left South America, traveling, going that one step further, up every island. I think their stay on each island was by necessity temporary. They depleted a lot of the resources. There was nothing noble about these people in that sense. And eventually they ended up in what probably to them was the promised land, Puerto Rico and Hispaniola, and even Cuba. Huge islands, bountiful, fresh water, long coastlines, everything they needed. And probably there was no one else there.
And are there many of them still there today?
Very, very few. The history shows that the Spaniards wiped out just about every last one in Hispaniola within 150 years. They just couldn't take it. They were enslaved, they were looted, robbed, and eventually massacred.
And it was the British and French who killed off the Amerindians in this part of the Caribbean. Today, the capital of Nevis is Charlestown, and here you can still see buildings that date back to the 1840s. Academics think that Charlestown became the main port on the island because it offered a better natural harbour. But many Nevisians believe that Charlestown became the capital after Jamestown fell into the sea during the earthquake and tidal wave of 1680.
Hey, I got some good news for all you listeners out there. I just heard from the Time Team people, and they found Jamestown. Not only that, they found clay pipes, fancy porcelains, all sorts of things, and guess what? They're going to be at our museum here in Nevis, so make sure you check it out.
This is Morton's Bay Fort, now called Fort Ashby, still here, and over here we have Cades Bay, which is probably the fort that disappeared into the sea and is maybe the origin of the story of what happened.
The archaeology is telling us that the settlement sort of went all along in a long road between the sort of beach and the road and just the other side of the road.
Well, that seems quite logical, but you know what this does? It changes our perception of our local history completely.
Well, it does, doesn't it? All the archaeological work does. The site obviously wasn't abandoned at the tidal wave and carried on.
Well, which means we have a lot of work to do, and I think we owe it to the local public to pursue this research.
We've just about run out of time, but what can we say about the bits of Jamestown we've been digging up?
We've clearly got a lot of structures here, a lot of things laid out, kind of running off each other,
yes,
all in similar alignment.
Yeah.
So we've got a well laid out settlement. Yeah. We've got these wide walls with something at the front, maybe a veranda around a courtyard or a yard. Very substantial buildings, long history of occupation from the 17th century at least up to the mid-19th. Lots of domestic occupation.
This is also the healthiest spot, I guess. It's a lot better to live here than down by the beach.
This is our feeling. We're getting so much domestic refuse here. Clearly this is where people are living.
Across the road in the Coconut Grove, we've been clearing around the ruins Stuart discovered and also have a theory about what these buildings were used for.
I want to show you this, because you can see here, we've cleared off a wall face along here. Goes round the corner, so we've got this big substantial building about 12 metres by 8 metres, and you can see here we've got a socket or something in here. Now the size of this building makes me think it's a warehouse.
Oh yeah.
Is this what do you feel about that, David?
I think that's a good assumption. Previous experience on this beach, on Nevis, has shown this size of a building, very much the same relationship to the road. The warehouse, of course, were pivotal to a settlement like Jamestown. There would be estates, sugar estates inland from here. When the sugar was ready after being processed, it would be brought down to the warehouse for storage, stored here, and then taken out to the beach for loading.
The building remains we've discovered mark the southern edge of Jamestown, which we now know extended all the way up to Cades Bay. The pottery evidence confirms that people were living in Jamestown until at least the 1840s, although the later finds are of poorer quality, suggesting that most of the wealthy people had long since moved to Charlestown. Our reconstruction of Jamestown shows the settlement as we think it must have looked just before the earthquake and tidal wave of 1680, which, if it really happened, would have certainly swamped any buildings close to the coast and damaged the fort at Cades Bay, perhaps creating the legend of Jamestown falling into the sea. At the Amerindian site, we've had more rain, and this has slowed our progress with Trench 1. Extra diggers have been brought across from the Jamestown site, as there's still plenty to do here. All the post holes have to be checked to make sure they're real, and not dug by crabs, for instance. Most importantly, it's a race to record the exciting archaeology we've discovered before we lose the light.
Right, linear feature at one end is 4.44 along the baseline, 2.37 out.
Phil, are we any nearer to solving what we've actually got in this trench?
Well, I think we are. I mean, there's still a hell of a lot of work to do, and I mean, we're very much battling against time.
We've got an hour and a half before it
yeah,
gets dark.
right. But when we extended out the under end of the trench here, you see there's absolutely no features. And when we've actually now got into the post holes, look how deep that one is that Caroline's in. Through Mick and Barney, this side of the trench, there are so many more internal features. And I think we're looking at the arc of a building.
And these are features inside that?
These are all features inside it. When you go outside of it, there's no features at all.
When we say features inside,
well,
what does that mean?
It's just that John said, when we were talking about these earlier, that the interior was divided up a lot.
Well, you would have had different structures inside to hold up your hammocks, to hold up your pots, to hold up whatever food you had saved and kept in the house. So you'd
looms,
have
anything to dry food.
Victor, can I borrow you for a minute? Yeah, sure. Are we still saying that the post holes that we've got here are of a structure that was like that?
Well, yes, I think it's like it. It's probably going to turn out to be bigger.
What about dates?
Well, you see, I was getting onto that. This, we're getting pottery out of the post holes. But you see, the pottery is exactly the same as all the other stuff we've been finding
From
on
the
the site.
middens and across
in other
the
words,
site,
this structure's got to be contemporary with what, 700 AD?
Yes, in that area.
Yeah.
Give or take 150 years.
Great, anyway, terrific piece of work.
Yeah, it is.
That is an exciting sight to see.
It's exciting because we've found our first ever prehistoric hut. 2 days ago, we started work recording the scatters of pottery with the help of local school children. And we couldn't have hoped for a better reward than to show them the evidence of the actual structures built by the Amerindian people who hunted and fished on this windswept coast over 1,500 years ago. This may be a small island, but as we've discovered over the last 6 days, it's packed with archaeology relating to all periods of Nevis's history. From the Amerindian settlement here on the windward side of the island, to Jamestown on the leeward side of the island, where the first English settlers established their capital. At Mount Travis, we found not only evidence to illustrate the well-to-do lifestyle of English plantation owners, but we also discovered the first slave village on Nevis. It's been an exhausting but incredibly rewarding 6 days. When we first got here, I don't think any of us dreamt that we would be so successful with virtually everything that we set out to do. Seems to me the last 6 days have been about lost stories. Yeah. The lost story of the plantation, the lost slave camp, lost Jamestown, and the loss of the Amerindians in Nevis. And all of these stories have been brought back to life in a very human way by the finds that we've had. The Bellarmine jar from Mount Travis, the fancy cup from the first settlers in Jamestown, the the bead from the slave camp, and of course...
Isn't he a nice little fella?
He's lovely. The pot handle, made by Amerindians here on Nevis 1,500 years ago. But now, time for a well-earned rest and a chance to enjoy the Caribbean.